Welcome to the Darkstream, Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com, and Unauthorized TV. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry I haven't been around the last few days. Been very busy with making the rubble bounce and getting some stuff working on the unauthorized side. If you're a subscriber, then you probably already know that over at Unauthorized, I've got a recent review of Haruki Murakami's latest book, Killing Commendatore. And so keeping things going, even if we're not quite as reliable on the Darkstream front as we'd like to be. So tonight's topic is going to be, it's more of a tangent from the recent discussions related to men and their ability or inability to live up to the recent the recent changes in Western society's rules and mores. I'm not interested in discussing men going their own way, qua men going their own way, but rather the metastructure of that conversation, which is how do we react to these various changes in society, and how do we know if what we're doing is just common sense or whether it's actual cowardice? Because the important thing to understand is that those two things are not mutually exclusive. Not at all. What is rational? What is common sense? Is it common sense to go and risk your life to go and defend a hill? Is it common sense for the burghers of Calais to offer themselves to an angry King Edward in order to spare the rest of the city? Hold on. I'm going to sneeze here. Sorry about that. So, the important thing here is that something can be common sense, and it can also be cowardice. It's common sense to not run into a burning building. Why would you ever run into a burning building? You might get set on fire. So would we necessarily blame someone who refused to run into a burning building? Not in most cases. On the other hand, we probably would blame someone who got out of a car. We know that someone would be blamed if he got out of a car and didn't bother trying to help anyone else, even though that would be the common sense thing to do. Save yourself. Let them go. And so I think that we have to apply our moral sense to it. And of course, then you get into the obvious question of which morality, whose morality? Well, the only legitimate morality, of course, is objective Christian morality, because everything else is just a sliding scale. Everything else is just you doing whatever it is you happen to see of immediate interest to you at the moment. Now, when we apply the Christian morality of being driven by love of God, love of your friends, love of your neighbors, even love of your enemy, this gives us a metric and it gives us a tool to decide whether we are being commonsensical or whether we are engaging in cowardice. And so, Jesus talked about the greatest love of all being him who is willing to lay down his life for his friends. So what we know is that sacrifice is a form of love. Self-sacrifice is a form of love. And so I think where we can divide the line, where we can separate common sense from cowardice, is when we reject the idea of self-sacrifice out of hand, because if we reject the concept of self-sacrifice, then we are rejecting the highest form of love. And I think that what we often see with men who are cowards in various different forms, whatever form it takes, and whether you're talking about physical cowardice, whether you're talking about moral cowardice, social cowardice, in all of those cases, what you tend to have is a myopic focus on the self, an excessive focus on the survival and the advantage and the thriving of the self. Now, that doesn't mean that it's bad for someone to thrive. There we go. Had to take out that moth. It's summertime in Europe. So when you look at that dividing line, and you realize that when people are talking about common sense, but they really mean cowardice, it's when they make it clear that they are not willing to make any sacrifice that will negatively affect themselves. Hate Loves Nothing asks, what is a coward? Is it one who fears? No, I don't think so, because everyone fears. Everyone fears something. There's that famous saying, the coward dies 1,000 deaths, the hero dies but once. And maybe there's some element of truth to that. I think it's, but I don't think that you can say that fear is cowardice, because that leaves no room for courage. Courage is overcoming your fear. And so cowardice is giving into your fear, being ruled by your fear. No, I'm not a Buddhist in the slightest. I'm actually quite contemptuous of Buddhism as a philosophy. I respect it as a tradition. I quite like both the Japanese forms and the westernized humanistic Hermann Hesse form. But it has absolutely no relevance to me or to anyone rational in a philosophical sense. So when you're looking at the courage versus cowardice, what you're really looking at is the willingness to face and conquer one's fear, or to give in to one's fear and allow it to make your decision for you. There's a lot of different things that take courage, and there's many different forms of courage. One of the most courageous things that I ever saw was a friend of mine was doing his black belt test, and he'd been through a grueling day of demonstrating all of his techniques, all of his kata. He'd been through a form of gauntlet that is specifically designed to sort of tenderize the fighter before he goes into his training or his sparring test. And he had to do 16 2-minute rounds, each with a minimum number of kicks just to tire him out. And he also had to score a minimum number of points against his, I think, 6 or 8 different opponents. And in the very last round, he walked into a spinning sidekick. It was just brutal, totally jackknifed him before he went down to his knees. And they stepped back and said, do you need a minute? And you could see that he had tears in his eyes. I mean, he's exhausted, he's tired, he's physically beaten, and he's in a tremendous amount of pain. And he just pushed himself back up and just said, no, keep going. And, they didn't show him any mercy. They just said okay and went right back at him. But, as soon as that round ended, we were all applauding him. We were all, there was an amount of actual emotion there because we were so amazed by the courage that he had shown by insisting on continuing in that situation. And so, is that common sense? Probably not, but it's courageous. It's courage, and it's something that other men admire. You don't need to unsub Bernard. We'll just ban you here. There you go. So, it's always interesting to me to see what people find interesting and amusing and so forth. Gautama Buddha asks, do you think the cowardly but genuine Christians go to heaven? Yes, I do. I absolutely do. Because courage is not the central point of salvation. Repentance is. Repentance is necessary. Accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord is necessary. Now, hopefully that will give you an amount of courage. Certainly it gave the martyrs such courage that the memory of them lives on for thousands of years. And so it's really remarkable what difference it can make when one's perspective goes from the momentary and the temporal to the eternal. Certainly it made Peter brave. He was a coward. He 3 times denied Jesus Christ. And yet, he later found the courage to go to his own death for the faith. Rolo Polo Boy says, should people marry if they do not plan or cannot have children? I don't know. I think that if you can't have children, there's no reason why you shouldn't marry. If you plan not to, even there, you may well change your mind. So I would say in both cases, yes, go ahead and marry. But you should, if you can, have children. Ganji Bob Flankus asks, is cowardice an aspect of sloth? That's a good question. I don't think so. Although they do seem to go hand in hand to a remarkable degree. I think cowardice is more a aspect of narcissism, but slothfulness may factor in some way. And of course, we've got the different types of cowardice, and so I suspect that some are more inclined to be common among the slothful than others. Certainly, I would guess that physical cowardice is probably more in line with slothfulness than, say, social cowardice. Ben Cohen says, what's the best way to deal and get along with women in the workplace since they're outside the male hierarchy? I treat them exactly like gamma males. I just refuse to engage emotionally. I refuse to even acknowledge that they are women. I just focus on the task at hand. Don't flirt. Don't get drawn into their games. Don't get drawn into their drama. The ironic thing is that when you refuse to do that, they often become attracted to you because, you have set yourself up, from their perspective, you have set yourself in a position of superiority over them, even though from a male perspective, that's not what you're doing. But, the less that you engage personally, the less that you engage emotionally, the easier it is to just keep things professional, keep things impersonal, and you won't have any problems. The reason that people tend to get caught up into various problems with women in the workplace is because they're just too cognizant of them as women. They're constantly thinking about, oh, does she like me? Do I like her? Do I have a shot with her? Et cetera, et cetera. No. It's not a good way to do it. There's lots of different expressions, some of them fairly vulgar, but the general rule of don't date where you work is a wise one. One of the problems, of course, is that that's one of the main places that men and women now interact today. But if you think about it, it's really not it's not an optimal meeting place because depending on what the work is, but if you're in an office place, that you're dealing with a professional woman who doesn't necessarily want to stay home and take care of your kids. Frankfurt School of Voxiversity, probably not. I'm not very interested in the Frankfurt School. I think I'm missing a super chat here. Let me go see what we got. Sacrifice fancy pants to have more children, Chris Scheuer says. Yes, I think that's important. I mean, it's really unfortunate in Italy, for example, because it's so expensive to keep your kid in designer clothes and stuff. You've got people that will only have one child so that they can dress them in fancy pants. I mean, who cares? Have 3, have 4, and let them wear budget jeans. It's not important. Let's see. Do you think Martin Luther was a good guy? I don't know. I would hesitate to have an opinion on that because I've never spent any time at all thinking about it. Can one sense evil within themselves? Yes, absolutely. Would it be cowardly to not explore the corruption? No. Why would you want to explore the evil within yourself? Why would you think that that would be good any more than exploring the evil in the world? That's not cowardice. That's wisdom. Let's see. Would you mind briefly explaining what defines a male as delta? Delta males are the average man, the normal man. They value competence and respect more than anything. They just want to have a place on the team. They want to understand what their role is, and they want to be respected and praised for doing their job right. Most men are deltas. These are the guys who make things run, who fix things. They're the obvious. It's very obvious who the deltas are because they're the ones who just show up and help everybody, and they're all fundamentally competent. You need to put up a tent, they put up the tent. You need to tap a beer keg, they tap a beer keg. I mean, deltas get it done. Deltas are the foundation of civilized society. And they deserve more respect than they get either from women or from other men. The other question here was, can a gamma become alpha? Generally, no. One of the poisonous aspects of gammas is that that's almost a definitive gamma question, because gammas are always trying to figure out, well, how can I go from being from the bottom of the hierarchy to the absolute top? That's just a totally delusional way to think. Why don't you focus on moving up a step and living a happy, self-satisfied life as a successful delta? That is difficult enough for the average gamma. Most gammas can't accomplish that. Why on earth would you be dreaming about becoming a king among men? Well, because you got a little secret king going on there. So don't worry about becoming an alpha. Worry about becoming a delta. Let's see. James Erickson said, how do you know the difference between knowing when to pick your battles and when you are just being a coward? Well, I find that pretty easy. Because first of all, nobody ever should embrace every fight that's offered to him. That's for fools and losers. Every single military strategist in history has written about the importance of picking how to fight, where to fight, and when to fight. In fact, the greatest of them, Sun Tzu, wrote about how the very best generals never actually have to fight. They manage to win their wars without even fighting a battle. But when you're being a coward is when you are afraid to fight. You're afraid to stand up for yourself. I've had people say, well, how come you're not taking on this? How come you're not taking on that? Why on earth would you back down in this particular situation, but not that one? And it's very easy. If I know that I cannot win, and I know that there's no point in trying to fight, I'm not going to fight. You retreat. There's no shame in that. There's no fear in that. That's a purely rational decision. Especially, you especially know it if you're trying to figure out how you can win the fight. Cowardice is when you just run away with no thought but for avoiding the fight. And I'm not talking about, the whole Gamma Parthian shot thing where you snipe at somebody as you run away and then you stalk them for the next year. And then the moment that you think that they might be vulnerable, you leap in and strike with your snarky comment that's going to make it all better. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about actual conflict. I'm talking about actually showed rather dramatically towards the end of the war, the end of the Peninsular War, that he was very, very capable of going on the offensive. And he was actually willing to take some pretty serious risks in order to go on the offensive. But he understood very clearly when it was the right time and the right place to be defensive, to retreat, to refuse to give battle, and when to do it. Texas Redneck says, why you and Owen streaming at the same time? We've done it many times. We've never really made any attempt to schedule our streams or anything. Owen does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. And I wouldn't expect that. Horatius763 says, I was a Voxiversity monthly contributor. Noticed I wasn't being charged anymore, maybe because of new credit card number. Where do I resubscribe to become a monthly contributor again? Horatius, just shoot me an email, voxday@gmail.com. We don't have the monthly contribution thing set up the way that we had it when you subscribed because our credit card processor decided that they weren't keen on that particular program. But we've got other options. So just go ahead and shoot me an email. And speaking of Voxiversity, the next one will be coming up reasonably soon. It's going to be on graduating Gamma. So I think it'll be very useful. Proud Mary says, do you think Ben Shapiro is a coward? Absolutely. Ben is a huge coward. I mean, he's the worst kind of coward. He's a chicken hawk. He's running around telling other people how important it is for them to go and risk their lives in war for empire while refusing to join the military himself. DaCosta says, how do you constructively deal with a Gamma at work who is picking on you constantly even when you stick up for yourself? Also, I am a woman, if that makes a difference. It does make a difference. What you need to do is you need to play your woman card. Just tell him, if you keep harassing me, I'm going to have to go to HR. That should be enough to shut him up. But if it's not, then you're just going to have to deal with him directly. The other thing that you can do is enlist the aid of other women against him, because as a general rule, women despise gammas. And so if you tell other women that this guy is giving you a problem, there's a good chance that they will help you out. Eventually, the Voxiversity where omegas are told how to take a shower. Yeah. People think that I'm exaggerating. I'm not at all. Rolla, why is minarchism an irrelevant idea for a government? Because it will never, ever happen. You might as well ask, why is it irrelevant to discuss government by leprechauns riding unicorns? There's no such thing. It has never existed. It will never exist. It is contrary to human nature. So, stop wasting your time talking about it. It's irrelevant. Chris Scheuer says, how to help someone become less of a coward? Well, are you talking about yourself? Like yourself? Or are you talking about trying to help somebody else become less of a coward? I think that the right way to become less of a coward yourself is to set yourself to challenges that frighten you. Force yourself to face it. And what you'll find is that each time you successfully face something that frightened you, it becomes easier to face the next challenge. No, don't join the army. That's a really bad idea when the neo-clowns are attempting to start a war with Iran. Bavarian Viking Bear says, are Voxiversities going to be uploaded to unauthorized TV? They're already there. All 12 of them are already there. In fact, there's more of them on unauthorized than there are on YouTube, because YouTube bans 2 of them. Gammas know how to shower. They don't always bother as much as they should, but they're much better about it than omegas. Let's see here. Druja Bear says, I just finished A Throne of Bones. I can't wait for A Sea of Skulls. Is there a date for the paperback release? No, because I have to finish writing it. I'm hoping to get it all out in December. Then you might want to take a look at Summa Helvetica. It's set in the same world. There's like 7 novellas and other stories, as well as a full novel. And MacroLens said he liked the book review. That's good. That's some of the first feedback I've gotten on the book review. So there will be more. There'll be more coming soon. What's better, prosciutto or chorizo? I prefer chorizo, but what's better than either is jamón ibérico Salamanca. Do you think this war with Iran will happen in the next decade? I don't believe there's going to be a war with Iran. I think that Trump is keeping us out of it. My concern, and I'm going to do a Darkstream on this soon, is that a war with Iran will turn out to be the U.S. Empire's Sicilian expedition. The Sicilian expedition was a very, very foolish and totally unnecessary war with Syracuse that led directly to the end of the Athenian Empire. Actaeon the Hunter says, do you think an alpha may in time transition into a sigma? No. Alphas are part of the hierarchy. Sigmas aren't. LRN said, one could be a physical coward because of their physique. In that case, they should go to the gym, work out, and learn how to fight. No, but you're not a physical coward because of your physique. The cowardice is about the unwillingness to take a beating. I mean, this is the thing that I've told people many times, and a lot of people don't seem to understand this. Toughness is about being willing and able to take a shot. It's not about what you can do to other people. People who are real fighters tend to be much more impressed by the people who can take a shot or two or three and keep coming than by those who are, all punch, but, have a glass jaw or whatever. In fact, they tend to speak very, very contemptuously of people who can only dish it out and can't take it. That's why you have terms like the glass jaw and so forth. Christopher Ava says Peterson's inability to call out the small hats is proof of his cowardice. Oh, I mean, he proves his cowardice in any number of ways. I mean, the guy not only lives in fear, the guy has constructed an entire philosophy of fear. So, welcome, Bears, Scott Selstrom says. I guess Owen must be done streaming or something. Is it possible that the annoying voice in my head is a gamma? It's not only possible, it's quite likely. I mean, that's where your that's where your gamma strain might come out. Which chapter should we be on in Mere Christianity? Chapter 1. I've been very, very, very slow about that. So I apologize. And tomorrow I'll try to get the first chapter quiz up. Pike of Terra Nova says, Peterson is afraid of his own gay shadow. That's totally true. Proud Mary asks, what strategic advantage Israel will get in case USA gives into the war with Iran? Well, the advantage that they get is that what they want is they want the U.S. to either conquer Iran entirely or at least damage it to the point where it's not a military threat to them. Iran is a significant military threat to Israel. It's a much, much bigger country. Persians are not Arabs. Don't forget that despite being armed and supported by the West, Iran not only stopped Iraq, but would have beaten Iraq if the war had continued. So, anyhow, it's they want the U.S. to do their fighting for them. Understandable, but not in America's interests. So, can Iran count on Russia or China for support? Almost certainly. There's no way that it doesn't benefit Russia and China if Iran is able to weaken the USA as much as possible. I personally think that the U.S. is at this point a military paper tiger and would very much runs a very high risk of being exposed as one if it actually engages in a real war with Iran. The game changer that we're all waiting for is the destruction of a U.S. carrier group. When that happens, the entire military balance changes. Once it becomes obvious that carriers are vulnerable, then the whole power equation changes. What's the difference between Satan, Lucifer, and the devil? Well, to our understanding, they're all the same individual. It's just different perspectives. People who believe that the God of this world is in fact God tend to view him as Lucifer, the light bringer, Prometheus, the one who sets man free. They don't look at him from the Christian perspective, which is as the devil, the Satan, the accuser. Can Israel defeat Iran in a direct conflict? No. But I mean, it wouldn't be much of a direct conflict initially because they're not contiguous. They're not in physical proximity, and so that's why it's most likely to be a lot of sound and thunder signifying nothing. No, Tony D says conventional forces like Iran would certainly collapse very quickly. That's not the case. Iran didn't collapse when their regular forces didn't collapse against Iraq, even though they were completely outgunned and weren't supplied with the same level of equipment. I mean, that's one of the reasons why people in the Middle East fear Iran so much, is because they know they are willing to make whatever sacrifices they have to make. And they have a very, very strong semi-professional militia system that is totally useless in the attack, but would be very, very difficult to fight if someone were to invade them. I mean, it would be fourth generation war on steroids. So it would be a very, very bad idea to think that the success of Desert Storm in any way would translate into the much larger and much more mountainous region of Iran and the more warlike Persians versus the Iraqi Arabs. Yeah, Macro Lens also points out very high population of military age men. That's also an issue. Blockchain Millionaire asks, why would the U.S. invade when they could just carpet bomb Iran? Because carpet bombing does nothing. The air war advocates were wrong. You can't win a war with bombs. We could drop every single bomb every single conventional bomb that the U.S. had on Iran, and it would accomplish virtually nothing. Trey Carter says, I assume Voxiversity is where I may learn more about the Alpha Omega hierarchy. Yes, there's 3 videos that directly deal with the social sexual hierarchy in the Voxiversity section. So just go there, you'll find all 3. Texas Redneck says, Vox, if you were single, Brittany Venti, smash or pass? I have no idea who Brittany Venti is. None whatsoever. Unrelated question. I'm purchasing my homeschooling curriculum for my kids for the fall soon. When would the Collier Junior Classics be available on Archaven? The first couple volumes are definitely going to be available. I mean, we'll probably have the crowdfunding thing. So you'd be able to purchase them probably by the end of July. And we probably have the first few volumes coming out sooner than you think. What are your thoughts on John Bolton? I think John Bolton should be immediately fired and not permitted to come within 100 meters of any television camera or any government position. No, I have not read Michael Malice's new book. No. Very, very uncomfortable with the idea of leading anyone. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of being in a group. And, the experience of having people ask me questions about their personal lives was so distasteful to me that I shut down my popular alpha game blog simply because I didn't want to spend any more time dealing with that kind of stuff. It's not of interest to me. I'm glad that people find what I'm saying to be useful in some manner. I'm glad that people get something out of it. I'm glad they can use it. But, I'm not a agony aunt. I'm not a advice columnist. And, I prefer that people just take what I've given and use it as a tool rather than saying, oh, this tool is really great. Let me go ask the manufacturer what I should use it for or how I should, this is a great shovel. Where should I dig? I don't know. I don't care. If you want to ask how the shovel works, I'll certainly be happy to explain that. But beyond that, it's really up to you. What's the biggest difference between sigmas and gammas? Well, there's several big differences. I think the main one is that sigmas are part of the hierarchy. I mean, gammas are part of the hierarchy, and sigmas are not. I have a little friend who came to visit me. He's a good boy. Who is the most hated character that you created? I would say that it would probably have to be Rebel. She's the one that inspired all the SJWs to start spazzing out and brought a lot of attention to the original Alt Hero campaign. So that would be my nominee. Let's see. I picked up a copy of Rebel Moon yesterday. Would you mind talking about writing that book some other time? But it's not horrible. I think you'll probably enjoy it. Is Jesus God? Yes. No, this is not the New Dog's Tale. This is the other Vishla. Are sigmas omegas who get their act together and are decent looking? Maybe, but I think there's more to it than that. The figurines need, we have a lot to do still on them. Vox, how is it that the German army had more freedom since it was 3rd gen, but in school they told us that the US army was more adaptable and less structured and therefore won, even though 2nd gen? That's because they lied to you in school. The US army won because the US army was almost uniformly outfought by the Germans in World War II. The Germans actually had an amount of contempt for the US soldiers because what they would do is advance to contact, hide, and call in the artillery and airstrikes. Repeat as needed. Good way to win a war, but not necessarily tactically superior. Let's see. Didn't all the allies win? Yeah, I'm just talking, but we're talking about how the U.S. pushed the Germans back across Western Europe. Are the global elite trying to defeat God? Yes. I don't think Russia Today is somewhat reliable source when it comes to the situation in the Middle East. Yes, I think it's a more reliable source than the mainstream U.S. media. How serious do you think America is about invading the Middle East again? Not very. It's just the neo-clowns doing what they've been doing for the past 15 years. Will you have comic subscriptions in the future? If we ever get to the point where we can deliver on a reliable schedule, we're not anywhere close to there yet. And frankly, we're not likely to be there as long as I'm involved in writing any of the comics because, I'm busy to the point that I'm not reliable in that regard, unfortunately. Yes, I've watched Chernobyl. It was good. Is any of the imported olive oil sold in the U.S. actually olive oil? Yes. My dog is a coward. How do I make him braver? Don't worry about it. I had a Vizsla, and he was the biggest coward you'd ever seen, but he was a great dog. It was funny because he would go, when we'd be out running around the lake in North Oaks, he would go running along with me, and he'd range a little bit ahead, maybe 10, 15 feet ahead. But then every now and then we'd run into another dog coming the other way. And he would, and if I stopped to like talk to the owner or something, he would kind of curl himself behind my legs, stick his head out from one side and say, woof. Like, not aggressively, just kind of like, let him know, I'm here. I got his back. So, unauthorized for do you really think Merkel is a cannibal? I don't. I assume that she's not. Let's put it that way. But I wouldn't put anything past any of the elite leaders. When can we expect to get more information about the mysterious Sigma male? After I finish the rest of the hierarchy is more important. I understand that all the gammas who can no longer dream that they're actually alphas are now redefining themselves as sigmas. Let's let them dream a little longer. Do you think there's an underlying war on Earth between Luciferians and Christians? Yes, but unfortunately these days it seems like only the Luciferians are fighting it. Are modern jets irrelevant in the days of drone strikes? Not yet, but they're getting there. I think they're going to be totally irrelevant within the next 15, 20 years. And once, the U.S. has to give in to the fighter jock fraternity that runs the Air Force. They are militantly opposed to the whole idea of unmanned jets, but the technology is there. The logic is there, and I think that you're going to see a country that doesn't have as much money to spend pursuing that in order to pursue air supremacy. My guess is that it will be the Russians, because the Russians have limited resources, they've got good technology, and they have a vested interest in ending U.S. air supremacy. And so it would be my guess that the Russians will be the first to fully embrace unmanned AI-controlled fighters. Because they have to be able to operate without being controlled, without being jammed and so forth. Duralex Sedlex said, Elizabeth Bathory murdered hundreds of virgin girls and bathed in her blood because she thought it would keep her beautiful. Nothing is beneath the elites. That's absolutely true. Vox, what would it take for you to no longer support Trump? I don't know. He's been very disappointing over the last year. The problem is, what's the alternative? There's no alternative. There's not a single individual in the Republican Party who is actually criticizing him much from the right. So, and also I don't know how much of the nonsense is him versus his administration. I mean, the guy's fighting, you know, multiple wars on multiple fronts. So, we have no idea what is really him and what is his, disloyal administration. So, all right. Well, I am going to call it an evening. Thanks for tuning in. Tomorrow we'll, no, probably not tomorrow. Saturday, I think we'll be able to do the next Mere Christianity. So look for that on the blog on Saturday. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.